Excellent. So let's move this over here. So, are you had a chance to get out over the weekend or experience any of this wonderful spring weather we've had last couple of days?
Yeah, totally. We moved out to Scarborough and we went to the beach. Stefan is here. Hello. We went to the beach in the East End, and all the kids and dogs and people were out. It was the most beautiful thing made. So, I saw a meme today. It was like when the weather gets warm and you realize you don't hate everyone and everything. And it's just this woman dancing outside. And I feel like that's exactly how I feel. I feel so much happier and better. My wife is the same way. Johnny,
I think
Johnny's not here, but I think Stefan said he didn't get a link, but
I sent them the stuff, but most of the time I've been sending people to YouTube just because they don't have to give us their email on YouTube.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. And Stefan, if you're going to still be around, or if Johnny's around, you guys want to maybe do a quick 30-second pitch for when new at the end, let us know, and maybe we'll have time for that. All right. Great to see everyone here. We're just going to get started. And then if you have questions, just throw them in the chat room, throw them in live on YouTube chat. And I'll ask Will as we go. Are you all set, Will?
Please, anything you want to ask. This is a bit of an ask me anything kind of situation, I think. So.
Absolutely. Let me just tell everybody we're going live. I got a couple links to click, and then I'll do the intro and we'll get going. I prepare a few things just to let people know we're live, because people forget they got stuff going on in their lives.
Yeah.
I hope everyone who's here is going to see us at Startup Investor Drinks if you're in town on April 27th. Will, do you think you can dance? Do you think you can dance? Is that like a challenge?
I don't think I can dance. I know that I cannot dance, but I enjoy doing it.
I was gonna say, are we gonna have a dance off at the next Startup Investor Drinks? Is this a challenge? That's what I'm asking.
Not from me. I won't. I'll MC it. I'll call it out, but you won't get me on the dance floor. I mean, you might actually. I don't know why I'm being so negative about that. I love dancing. I just think I suck at it. But when I moved to Spain, when I went to Spain, and everybody danced there, like the kids and the adults and the teenagers and everybody, I was like, oh, like, it's not, you don't have to be good to do it. You just have to enjoy it. And so I started enjoying dancing, whether or not I was any good at it.
Yeah. And he's throwing out the idea of a hip hop pitch at the next event. Yeah, feel free, man. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure everybody would love it. All right. Are we ready?
Let's do it.
I'm going to hide the second video. It's a little distracting, the YouTube stream. Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the Startup Coach, founder of Toronto Starts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is actor, musician, pitch and speech coach, and now author of Transform Your Speaking Skills, the always amazing Will Greenblatt. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you for having me. And thanks everybody for listening to this. It's really great. The first time I've talked about the book on any kind of formal podcast.
Yeah, we've known each other for a while, but I don't want to get into that. Let's just jump right into the questions. And if you have questions, just throw them in the chat room, everyone. Can you tell us about your background as an actor and how that led to you starting OutLoud Speakers School?
Yeah, so that goes back to when I was 7 years old. And my dad was an actor. My mom was a writer and director for the theater. And my sister was doing theater and film and TV as well. So my father and my sister both had an agent, and she knew our family quite well because, she represented my dad and my sister. So my sister went up for this film, and there was a role for a little 6-year-old boy. And my agent went, hey, this kind of sounds like Will, or William, as my name was back then. And she jokingly sent it to my dad being like, hey, would William want to go up for this? And my dad was like, neither him nor my mom wanted me to get into the acting business, because most actors don't want that for their kids because they know how hard it is and how stressful and difficult to make a living. And so I ended up auditioning for this American feature film and getting it right away. My very first audition, I got a lead role in an American feature film with Anne Bancroft from, Oscar winner of The Graduate. really, really famous actress. So it kind of kickstarted this child acting career, which I had no idea of the magnitude of it at the time. It was just a fun thing for me to do, but I started acting. And yeah, I acted consistently kind of all through my childhood.
And how did that lead you to starting OutLoud Speaker School?
So when it was time to go to post-secondary school, it was kind of clear to me, oh, I'm just going to be an actor. And so I auditioned for National Theatre School of Canada, and I got in, and it was, it's supposed to be a really prestigious program. But I ended up having a really, really miserable time there. Anybody who's, been a client of mine or come to any of my webinars, I tell this story quite a lot. I went there thinking this is going to be the start of my career. It's going to be great. I'm going to learn so many good things, get a lot of industry contacts, and just start my life as an actor. I'm so excited. And when I got there, it was very clear that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't clear right away, but it became clear over the 3 years. The program itself was really quite toxic emotionally. There were kids with nervous breakdowns and with eating disorder episodes. There was a couple suicidal threats. I don't know what you would call them psychologically, but there was a girl who sort of very publicly threatened to end her life while she was at school with us. It was a really, really mentally toxic and negative environment. Myself, I was going through a lot of problems because my brother had died 2 years before I went there. And I was still really struggling with that. And so I was not in a good place mentally. And then this program on top of that was just too much for me to handle. So I stuck it out. I stayed there, even though I really clashed with the administration, the way they ran the school. They wanted me to sort of be a certain way, act in a certain type of way, be a certain type of person. And I resisted that because it didn't feel right to me. And after fighting them kind of the whole way and graduating, I was like, well, this is it. I stuck it out to graduate from this program. And now I don't even know if I want to be an actor anymore. And so I ended up doing a couple gigs and I was just miserable. I was really unhappy. And so I was like, well, this can't be my life. This is what I've been working for since I was 7 years old. And it's deeply unsatisfying and I'm miserable. So I just knew that I needed some kind of a change. So a long story short, I ended up traveling to Spain and started teaching English, which led me to China and starting my first company, which was a English education and business coaching company. And then this is a whole other story, but I ended up hurting my back in China quite severely and having a back injury, which led me back to Canada. When I recovered from that back injury, I started OutLoud Speaker School as a mix of entrepreneurship, English education, and acting. That's kind of the three pillars of what we teach.
And then from there, what inspired you to write a book in this day and age? And specifically the book, Transform Your Speaking Skills, Gain Confidence, Captivate Audience, and Advance Your Career.
So, I mean, cynically, the answer is I wanted to, sell more services, coaching services. Like that's why everybody convinces you to write a book. They go, you should write a book because it'll give you credibility in your field. If you're author of blah, 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 you'll get on news stories or you'll get invited to do talks and, people are more likely to buy from you if you're an author of something. So that was some advice I had from some mentors. And then when I started writing it, I realized this is a chance for me to actually lay out all the work that I do for my clients, not in a way that will get me more credibility, but will actually help people reading it. Obviously, there's never going to be a substitute for the one-on-one or group coaching face-to-face in real time, but I could lay out a lot of the work that I teach clients in webinars, in workshops, and in one-to-one coaching. I could lay out that in the written word. And as I started doing that, I realized so much of my work comes from my personal experiences, the things that I'm interested in, the things that I've researched myself, the things that I've gone to school for, the things that I've created as coaching frameworks and aids, the kind of books I'm interested in, the shows I watch, the podcasts I listen to. All of that is deeply connected to who I am as a human being and who I am as a person and what's happened to me and what I've chosen to do. And I think that's true for every single entrepreneur, every single business person, anybody. You cannot separate who you are from the life you've lived. And you cannot separate that from your business and the reason you do the work you do today. So that's why I encourage entrepreneurs so much. Tell your story. How did you get into this work? Why do you care about it so much? Why are you a good person to tell people about this sort of thing, these problems and solutions? Why do you deeply care about these problems and solutions? So I realized this was my chance to actually practice what I preached and tell my own story and talk about the things that were maybe scary to share and that I wasn't comfortable talking about in public necessarily. Put it down in print. And once it's out there, then you kind of have to stand by it. You can't hide anymore because it's out there. So that was, for me, became the impetus to write the book. Is if I can share my story, start to be a bit more honest, vulnerable, and authentic in the way that I want my clients to be, I can at least gain credibility on that front and say, hey, I'm going to share some tough stuff about myself. I'm not just going to ask you to do it without doing it myself. I'm going to do it first, and hopefully that will inspire you to do the same.
So public speaking and stage fright is like one of the number one fears. And I've seen you transform, very timid and afraid startups to very vocal and pitching excellently, like just going for it. How do you work with the clients to identify and overcome stage fright or imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, first is, I think, admitting to them that I myself suffer from it, quite cripplingly, or used to be quite crippling. I think, again, with the idea of sharing things about yourself, as a coach, you should really lead with that, I believe. And coaches can apply to, if you're the CEO of a startup or if you manage a team at a company, you are a coach, a manager or a leader, whatever. You should basically be a coach. That's how you get people to improve. That's how you get people to buy into the work they're doing, is by coaching them through problems rather than saying, do this for me because I want it. Or, you figure it out, I hired you. You want to coach people through their challenges and help them find the right answer and help them. And with that, you need trust, and you need to develop a rapport that's really based on real trust. So the first thing I do is I share that I suffered really badly from imposter syndrome and from stage fright, and I still do. The difference is now I have a whole set of tools to deal with it. But I tell the story, I think in the book, and I definitely tell it, out loud to a lot of people, is I often share the story of the last play I was in Toronto, and it felt like quite a big deal. It was with a big director, big writer, big co-stars. And on opening night, 20 minutes before, I was having a full-blown panic attack before going on stage. Just like I could not breathe for the life of me. I was completely paralyzed. And I was like, I can't remember a single line I have. This is going to be horrific. This is so scary. But what I was able to do was like, hey, remember all this work you've been doing with OutLoud, all of the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that I teach and I've learned myself and practice, all of the breathing techniques, deep belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, all of the warm-ups and the silly voices and faces that you make during a warm-up, all of the mental reminders about the audience that they're on your side, about this is not such a big deal. I tell that story and I say, the feeling of stage fright and imposter syndrome may never go away, but you'll get better at dealing with it. And so I start there. And then the next thing is teaching them all of those tools that I myself use. So I admit that I have it first, and then I give them the toolkit that I myself have used to great effect. And that also a lot of my other clients have used, which really helps because they go, okay, he's not just making this shit up, pulling this out of his ass. He's saying, I myself have used this. Many people who I've taught this to have used it, and it really, really helps. And it's about building confidence. It's a multifaceted thing.
Yeah. And I think I don't know of a single person who does speak on stage who doesn't either have stage fright or imposter syndrome.
Yeah. On some level, maybe if you've been up there for 30 years and, but even then, almost everybody, my co-founder has imposter syndrome and stage fright. And she's in her 60s. She's an award-winning actress. You couldn't name an accomplishment she doesn't have. And she has it. So it's like, what hope is there for the rest of us? We shouldn't try to banish stage fright, imposter syndrome, anxiety. You have to learn how to make friends with it and manage it.
Absolutely. I'm talking to people like you and me who I've spoken and led over 1,000 events. I don't even know the number.
Yeah.
It's just so many, but I still get it. We just have ways of dealing with it. I get it all the time. And so you just, again, it's you have to just find a way to deal with it. Can you share any success stories from clients who have worked with OutLoud Speaker School and how their speaking skills have impacted their careers?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many on the entrepreneur side and the corporate side. I mean, that's kind of how we bisect our client bases. We work with a lot of corporate leaders and we work with a lot of startup founders and entrepreneurs. So I guess for your audience, it's a bit more relevant for the entrepreneurs' success stories. So the quick, easy number to share is that our clients have raised over $200 million US in investment, and that's from pitching. You know, obviously they need to have a good product. They need to have good execution on their business plan and their strategies. I can't take credit for all the money, but it's really, really clear that people who can pitch well do better faster. And so when I work with startups and convince them to invest their time and energy into bettering themselves as speakers, transforming their speaking skills, hence the name of the book, the time in which they're able to raise money, the amount they're able to raise, and the amount they're willing to put themselves out there and go pitch at different events, you know, which leads to more opportunities. In the book, I share this idea of a virtuous cycle of saying yes to speaking opportunities. It kind of goes like, say yes to the opportunity, then you get more time on stage. You get more time on stage, you get better at being on stage. You get better at being on stage, you get more, you get asked to be on stage more, you get more opportunities, and then the cycle just keeps going. So, you know, the more, I think what my work gives them as well is that initial confidence to put themselves out there and up there. A lot of people start from this position of, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I don't want to have my face or my voice out there. I just want the product to speak for itself. I want the technology, the SaaS solution, whatever, to speak for itself. But especially in the early days of your startup, you are the product. This business is only going to last if you are at the helm. You know, until you've built it up into a self-sustaining business, you are the product, you are the company, you are the service, right? And so I try to tell founders that is like, put yourself in the front, because that's what people are buying into, whether they're a customer, an investor, a partner, talent that you're hiring, they're buying into you and your vision. So what I like to think of is I give them that initial comfort to stand up there, tell their own story, connect with their own story, link it into the story of the business, and start putting themselves out there at fireside chats, panel events, you know, pitch competitions, pitching events like yours, startup drinks around the city, around the province. And then, yeah, you know, some of our clients have gone on to found top Canadian tech companies. We've worked with Fortune 500 companies around the world. One of our clients became the CTO of Ericsson, Verizon. Yeah, I don't want to sit here and brag too much, but that's yeah, there's been some good success stories.
Yeah, and often with founders, they think it's only pitching. But when it comes to speaking and communication skills, there's so much value outside pitching. You need to attract the right team. You need to get media. You need to convince people that you can sell the product to people. There's a lot that needs to be done. Absolutely.
Managing your team, client relationship management. There's like, it's so much of it. There's a reason that every single year these job recruiter sites run these studies and ask for the top skills valued by employers. Communication skills are number one every single year. And it's only going to get more important as AI starts to take over a lot of this shit, right? Understanding how human beings work and how to communicate with them is only going to get more important.
Absolutely. What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions people have about public speaking, and how can they be avoided?
Well, interestingly enough, one of the first ones that comes to mind is it's actually not one of people's biggest fears. That's a thing that gets shared all the time. And I looked into this because it's a totally self-supporting stat that I used to want to throw out there, but I was like, I should make sure this is true. And it's not true. It comes from a Swedish study where they asked specifically about social phobias. And in the sample size, they realized that of these people who admitted to having social phobias, speaking in public was present in about 75% of them. So it's not a real sample across the population. But what is true is that all of us as human beings are social creatures. Status and relationships are incredibly important to us. So when we are talking to other people, it feels deeply on a genetic level that this is a life or death moment. Because if you think about it from an evolutionary psychology perspective, it used to be, right? You talk to your tribe mate in the cave and you told them something they didn't like, they could bash you over the head with a rock when you weren't looking, you're dead. Or you say something, you stand up in front of the fire and say, hey, I think we should move our cave over to the other side of the river. People go, boo, and then they kick you out of the cave and you don't have any food or shelter. You can't mate with anyone. And, so evolutionarily speaking, communication, public speaking, interactions with other people, social standing, hierarchies, all of this is incredibly, incredibly important. So that's where I think the ubiquitous nature of public speaking and communication and social anxiety comes from, is that human relationships are so important to us as human beings, and they are very emotionally charged. So one of the common misconceptions about speaking is that it's the words that matter most. And I would say the words definitely matter a lot. And I spend a lot of time with clients talking about how to say certain things. Messaging is important. Story is important. But on an interpersonal communication level and at a public speaking level, your tone of voice, your volume, your pace, your pitch, your eye contact, your physical expression, your facial expression, and having the appropriate level for all of these. I teach something called the speech settings, which is like, a DJ's mixing board that you can adjust the volume and the pitch and the pace of your speech. Finding the appropriate settings and the appropriate way to say all the different things that you're saying is what builds trust with a listener. For example, if you're like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that, that you broke your leg last week, and you're smiling, it doesn't build trust. It doesn't feel like you're very empathetic. And so, that's an extreme example, but finding the appropriate emotion for what you're saying is really, really important. So I'd say appropriate emotion for your words is almost more important than finding the right words.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that about the public speaking fear thing. Again, I don't know how you rate it on a scale, but running monthly events and asking people if they want to pitch or get in front of the crowd, I can tell you right now, there's a lot of things people would rather do than
Oh my God.
stand up in front of people, whether, they may
Totally.
be more afraid of spiders or snakes or something else, but
Yeah,
they don't want to do it.
totally.
Can you tell us about this importance of storytelling in public speaking and how it can help individuals connect with their audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, going back to the evolutionary psychology thing. Stories are what helped human beings survive. Because we lived in small tribes and groups, the way that we shared information and were able to thrive and become the dominant species on the planet was because we could tell each other stories. Now, back in the day, that story was, hey, today I was down by the river and there were a bunch of berries there, but when I was going for them, a lion jumped out of the bush and I barely got away with my life. So I think there's a fucking lion down there, maybe avoid that bend in the river for the next couple months. And the tribe that could tell that story in a way that the other tribe members listened to and went, oh my God, lion, so scary. That tribe would survive. And the other tribes that couldn't tell good stories would forget, they wouldn't hear the information, they wouldn't listen, and they would die. So eventually human beings became storytelling animals. There's a great book called The Storytelling Animal that lays all this out. And nowadays we have stories, as Yuval Noah Harari talks about, like laws. The laws we have in our society is a story. Religion is a story. The religions that we follow, the politics and the political structures that we agree to is a story. Money is a story. Your business, your startup, your limited liability corporation, those are just stories that we all agree upon, and that's why they exist. But they don't actually exist in nature until we all agree upon these stories. So it's so deeply embedded in us that we don't even think about it. So how you can use it to connect with an audience is just, first of all, understand that huge fundamental fact of how important story is. Don't neglect it, and think about, what is the story of my pitch or presentation? And it should go something like this. Your audience has a problem. You have a solution, and then you'll all get a prize. Your problem is your audience's problem, knowing that, how to paint the picture, how to talk about it in a way that your audience agrees with, feels emotionally connected to. You say it out loud and they go, yes, fuck, this guy gets it. That's so important as part of the story. The second part of the story is your solution. What do you do that solves those pain points? What are all the great, cool benefits? What are all the objections that the audience might have, and how can you counter them before they raise them? And then finally, the prize. How does life get better after they take on your solution? This story structure mimics the hero's journey, which is a kind of fundamental structure to stories across cultures and across time, outlined by Joseph Campbell. But the problem, solution, prize structure kind of mimics that circular nature of the hero's journey, and is a really satisfying meta structure for any pitch or presentation you're telling. And if you can understand your problem and who you're solving it for, why your solution is so cool and useful, and then what the prize is that everybody gets after they implement your solution, that story is very fundamentally satisfying. And then one last point, I know I'm gone on a big tangent here. If you start your pitch or presentation with a story, you'll get people's attention. You know, a lot of people start their pitch with, hi, my name is, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares what your name is. Nobody cares what your company's name is. What they care about is the problems and the solutions, but everybody wants to listen to a story. So instead of saying, you know, I started this company because blah, 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 just say, in 2008, I was living in Montreal. I had no money. I was cut off from my family. I was freezing. I didn't know if I could pay my rent. And then I realized that I could design websites for $7 an hour on GoDaddy. I started doing that. And then I realized, oh my God, you know, GoDaddy doesn't have you tell the story of being in Montreal with the difficulties and the freezing and the not paying the rent. Everybody's just hooked. Oh my God, is he going to pay his rent? Is he going to be able to figure it out? That's a good story, right? So by telling a story with conflict and with suspense and with high stakes, you'll be able to hook people's attention at the beginning. Once you've hooked their attention, you can tell them all about your company.
And the other thing about storytelling, like you mentioned earlier, but specifically with pitches, is remembering. People hear a lot of pitches. You go to my event, you're hearing 20 plus pitches. You go talk to investors, they're hearing 20 plus a day. You need to be remembered. And people will remember the person who couldn't pay the rent. Yeah, I like the person who couldn't pay the rent.
Yeah.
You know, they won't remember Bob or Susan, but they'll remember that part.
Exactly. Because their emotions get activated when they hear a story about not paying the rent. They start to breathe a little faster. Their heart beats a little faster. Their cortisol shoots up through their brain and they go, oh, fuck, not paying the rent. Hey, I've been there, or I can imagine what that's like. And that's why story is so powerful, because people actually vicariously feel the stress of that story, and their emotions get activated, and that causes memory, because those are the important things to pay attention to in life.
I'm going to throw you a couple curveballs here based on some of the stuff going on in the chat room.
Yeah.
Storytelling, I understand the importance of it, but a lot of founders struggle with the financial model slide or how they're doing their projections. Do you have any tips or tricks on how to incorporate that in the story, or how to show that?
Show the financial models?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, often the financial models are, you know, they're up for interpretation, and it can lead to a lot of difficult questions. So in general, what I would say is, you know, you want to tell the story of a growth company when you're pitching to investors, right? So if you can find some reasonable data that suggests, from what you've already worked upon, that the whole story you're telling from the beginning of the slide, and then as this company is growing and building in credibility and the story is building out, then it kind of continues off into the future in a way that makes sense with what you've already laid out. That's the way to do it. So if you're like, you know, early on in the company, we were making 10K a month and we were doing this, and then all of a sudden you say this company is going to be worth, you know, $2 billion in 3 years' time, it doesn't make any sense. So you want to make sure that it connects to the story, not just in a numerical level, but also in a psychological level. Does this make sense with the story that you've already laid out about your company? And in general, it's best to leave data questions as much as possible till after the pitch part is over, because you want to tell the story on an emotional level, on a high level, abstract, not abstract, but high level, as much as possible first. Then you can say, and join us in, changing the future of blah, blah, blah. Thank you very much. Woo! You get the claps from the investors. Then the questions come. Now you can get into the nitty gritty. You've laid out the story. Now it's time to answer the technical questions, the financial questions, the operational questions, all that sort of stuff. You definitely want to tackle that earlier, but don't get into the weeds of the details. As you said, you want to share very clear, very simple, jargon-free facts about your company that support the story from, 0 to infinity and beyond. And then you can get into the weeds once they ask about your financial models. All those financial slides and stuff, that can be in your appendix slides. You don't have to have that in the first 10 to 15 slides of the slide deck. Get into that later.
So another question here. So I'll just kind of summarize it. What does a public speaking workshop with you look like that for a CEO getting ready to fundraise? So
the first thing we do is I like to lay out, set the context, as Stefan is saying, set the context first, not the details. So the first thing I do is set the context of good communication and public speaking, which is this evolutionary biology stuff, psychology stuff, where we come from as tribal human beings and storytellers. That matters. So first of all, I have to convince them of that, because a lot of CEOs, as I said, they think it's about the words they use or the idea of their product, or they think the product will speak for itself. I have to convince them that no, what you say, and almost more importantly, the way you say it is going to be a huge part of whether or not you're going to fundraise, or how fast or how much. So I have to convince them of that first, and I give a little presentation on it. I also have to demonstrate with my own speaking skills. Hey, look, the amount of effort and engagement and enthusiasm that I'm displaying right now to convince you of what I want to convince you of, which is how important this stuff is, and the things you should learn, that's getting buy-in from you right now. You're listening to me partly because of the years I've spent honing my speaking skills and my storytelling abilities. So if that is true, then surely it's true that you have to do the same to get investors to buy in. And so I have to demonstrate that on my own. I have to set the scene, and then we get into the warm-up. And the warm-up is such a powerful tool, and it's so goofy and seems ridiculous. You've seen me do it a bunch of times. It's like a theatrical warm-up that has weird faces, weird sounds, weird breathing techniques, weird movements. And it's probably one of the most powerful tools that any CEO, any entrepreneur, any public speaker can learn. It's a series of breathing techniques, movements, a bit of a mindfulness meditation in there, some tongue twisters, some facial exercises, but it gets the body and the mind in a perfect zone to speak clearly and loudly and with enthusiasm, and to not be nervous. So we do the warm-up. I teach them that. Then we get into some live coaching. I get somebody to give me their pitch, whether this is a group or one-on-one. I listen to the pitch, and then I go, okay, that was awesome. And one really important thing as a leader, start with the positives when you're giving feedback. Everybody kind of knows this, but it's important to reiterate. Don't start by saying, here's what you did wrong. This could have been better. That could have been better. Start by finding something positive to say about what they just did. And there's always something positive you can say. Unless it's the worst piece of shit thing you've ever seen in your life, which chances are it's not. Even if it is, you can find something to say. You know what? What I liked what you did about that is you were really still, and that stillness was good because it showed me that you had some confidence, even if they were mumbling or they seemed disengaged or they had this kind of standoffish attitude. They weren't making eye contact. They weren't telling a story. You can still find something good about what they did. And you should do that whenever you're coaching anyone. Find the positive first and highlight it to show the person that you're not just there to rip them apart and take them down. You're actually there to help them. And so starting with the positive is a powerful way to do that. Then we say, okay, but here's some things you can do instead. And I usually start by looking at delivery before we look at content. Delivery is first because it's all about awareness first. The first step in our method is called awareness, because it's about, how do you speak? Do you even know how you talk? Do you know how you sound to other people? Do you know how you come across? Many of us think we do, but we have no idea. Because why would you? Unless you're constantly asking people to tell you how they find you and what little things about the way you speak and the way you move and the way your hands work, how that comes across, you're never going to do that kind of work. So we start to do that work. I show them the speech settings and I say, okay, where do you think you are for volume? Or I ask the crowd, where are they for pitch, pace, clarity, inflection? And we start there. Then the whole crowd or the CEO can feel what it's like to shift those. What is it like when you shift your volume from a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10? How powerful is that? What's it like when you take your pace from 9 out of 10 super fast to a 3 out of 10 and slowing down? What happens, to all these adjustments? And that's really, really powerful. Once they get a sense of that, then we start to go into storytelling. And I show them the problem solutions prize structure. And then we talk about things like the big 5 human pain points, which are what I believe are the pain points underneath every good business, which is you're solving for time problems, money problems, health problems, relationship problems, or emotional well-being problems. Ideally, 2 or 3 of those. And we talk about that. Are you talking about these things? Or are you talking about, we can reduce operational load by 17%, which is probably actually, yes, the metrics of what you're doing, but do I understand those in terms of time, money, emotional well-being, stress? Is this helping my relationships? Is it helping my physical health? How is it really benefiting me? And then we get into that. We keep doing the pitch coaching, and then often I'll give them times to write out their story, their problem solution prize template. And that's usually how a single workshop looks. And then if they keep coming back to me, we get into deeper emotional stuff about their background, where they're from, why they communicate, and then the parts of their story that maybe they're a little afraid to share. And I start to hear about that. And we talk about, can you share that part of yourself? If not, that's okay. Never force anyone to share anything they're uncomfortable with. But why, what are the things that you wish you could share, but you're afraid to, or you're holding back? And we get into that stuff. And then eventually, if they work with me, I start to teach them how to be their own coach and how to coach people underneath them as well. And we work on those kind of high performance habits, how to automate their good speaking skills, how to automate their routines, and how to ultimately be a good leader to those, and teach this work to those who come, who need them for leadership.
In your book, Transform Your Speaking Skills,
Yeah.
you talk about the 5 acts of the signature OutLoud method and how it can help individuals improve their public speaking skills. Can you explain them?
Yeah. So act 1 is awareness. And again, as I mentioned, it's all about how do you communicate? What are your physical and vocal habits? And what are other people's physical and vocal habits? Because sometimes somebody's talking and they just piss you off or rub you the wrong way. And you're like, why do I hate that person's voice? And you don't necessarily know. So this actually gives you a framework for understanding what is it about people who I like listening to, what makes a good speaker, and what makes a speaker that maybe turns me off. And it should be noted that a large part of this is subjective, but we just start to pay attention. That's the awareness. Awareness also has in it the importance of mindfulness meditation as a practice. When you can be more aware of your surroundings, of your own breath, and of the present moment, you will be a better communicator because you're not thinking, oh my God, did I say that part of the pitch? Oh my God, did they like me? Oh my God, is this going well? All of that takes you away from being a good communicator. But the awareness that you build from doing mindfulness meditation is like more powerful as a communicator than you can possibly, than I can possibly state. Act 2 is called articulation, which is that storytelling stuff, as well as how to speak a bit more clear, how to make the story a bit more clear, how to remove unnecessary words, how to trim the fat, condense, and then and just articulate things more clearly. Act 3 is action, which is putting a lot of this stuff into practice. So when's your next pitch? What talks do you have coming up? Let's, look at your pitch deck. Let's take some action, and as well as giving them some actionable on stage techniques. What can you literally do during the moment that you're pitching to be more persuasive, to be more effective, to engage the audience? Act 4 is alignment, which is going deeper into your personal story and talking about that stuff that I mentioned earlier. What do you truly care about, but are afraid to mention in your pitch? What are the parts of you that you maybe feel ashamed of or scared of, or that nobody will accept, but that just might make people relate to you on a beautiful human level? And can you start to show some bits of those parts of your life and your emotional experience? Share those with your team, share those with investors, share those with customers, so they can get to know you and feel not just like you, but really love you. That's the crazy thing, is you love the people who you see behind the curtain, right? The people who are close to us, we know what they look like when they cry. We know what difficult times they've gone through in their lives. We know about their kids and what struggles they're having with their kids, or whether they have had kids or been able to have kids, or what their childhoods were like, what their mom's name is, whether they get along with her, whether their dad was around, and whether he was a great dad or not, or what his parenting style was. All that shit is what we know about our loved ones and our best friends. And so if you can share a bit of that openly without expectation, just to share, just to be human and create space for other people to share, people will really start to trust you and feel love towards you. It's a weird thing to say, but it's 100% true. And I don't try to advocate doing this so you can sell more shit or so you can manipulate people, but it's about trying to be your authentic, vulnerable self everywhere you go, whether it's business or life. It creates a beautiful ripple effect of other people feeling comfortable to share the parts of themselves that they thought were shameful, embarrassing, not okay. And then you do that first, and it creates a really great feeling. So that's the kind of really emotional shit that we get into in Act 4. And then Act 5, we go, okay, we've done all this stuff. Now it's time to put it into practice, into routine. So it's called automation, and it's all about high performance habits. You know, we talk about The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits, those two great books about habit formation. We talk about what a good rehearsal, a rehearsal routine looks like to better your speaking skills, what you can listen to, podcasts, what videos you can watch, all that stuff to keep going with this stuff and keep the way you communicate at top of mind, so that it doesn't become this cool thing you did with me, one summer in 1 year. It becomes a lifelong practice of being more powerful as a speaker, more open and empathetic, more confident, more clear, all that stuff. You can keep improving that till the day you die, which is a beautiful thing. And that's like any good practice. So that's those are the 5 A's.
What advice would you give to someone who is nervous about public speaking but wants to improve their skills?
So much, but the main thing is just, it's so much less dangerous than you think. It's so much less important than you think, whether or not people think you did a good job. It's so much less important whether you stumbled over your words. You told a great story, I remember years ago. I can't remember where, but you were pitching to like Deloitte or something, or you were working for Deloitte and you spilled coffee all over the table. Can you tell that story real quick?
Absolutely. Sorry about that. So 2 weeks into my job at Deloitte, I just moved back with my brand new baby. She just had the baby, and I got a new job at Deloitte, and my job was to implement Microsoft Exchange and Microsoft technologies across Canada in Deloitte offices. But what happened is, about 2 weeks into it, my job, my boss comes in and says, oh, by the way, we don't have permission from Global to do this. So in order to keep your job, you got to convince all the global CIOs that it's okay for us to do this. I'm like, great.
Thanks.
So yeah. So in a few days, we went to New York. We're in New York. We're at in Times Square, Deloitte, top of the tower somewhere in this huge boardroom with all the global CIOs from all over the world. And I'm 25, maybe. I'm nervous as hell, and I start my spiel, and my hands are going. I'm going like this, and I knock over this big pitcher of water. And I stopped for a second, and there's nothing I could do about it. As all these CIOs grabbed their laptops, and I just kept going. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to keep talking. And later, my boss tells a story that I knew Craig was going to be okay when he just kept going.
Yeah, totally. And the same thing happened to me, a story I tell in the book, which is I was doing my first paid speaking gig, and the exact same thing happened, except it wasn't water. It was my phone rang while I was on stage. I had forgot to turn it off. And I just took it out of my pocket. It was my wife, girlfriend at the time. And I just clicked, put it back in my pocket, and I just kept going. And I remember all these people watching me like, what is he going to do with the phone? And I just kept going. And then later, half of them were like, that was a great move. And the other half of them were like, oh, I didn't even remember your phone ringing. So, there's lots of stories like that. But what I love about that story is, like, you can't really think about a more high pressure situation. You're pitching for your job. You're young, you're pitching in front of all these fucking suits from the global office. There couldn't be more of a power imbalance there. And the worst happens. The thing that's everybody's worst nightmare. You spill a bunch of water, almost fucking up their laptops, and you were fine. So that's the message, is that if you're nervous, just know, I don't know if you've seen Star is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga.
I haven't seen that one, no.
So, no, spoiler alert, but he ends up peeing himself. Bradley Cooper's character pees himself on stage at the Grammys or something. And then a couple weeks later, like he's after getting sober or something, because he was drunk when he does that, he gets sober and then he's back and people are cheering for him, so it's one of these things where it's like you can literally pee yourself on national television and you can recover from that. There is pretty much nothing that you can't recover from in terms of a mistake while speaking in public. So knowing that that is your safety net, and knowing that the techniques that you can practice and learn and rehearse are also like a safety net, then you can go out there and take risks. And no stage is too big for you. No opportunity is too big for you to say yes to. Say yes as much as you can. And you'll look up one day and be like, man, I never thought I could do all these stages or say all these things, or take advantage of all these opportunities. And I did it. And I was fucking terrified every single time, but I did it even though it was really hard. And your self-confidence, self-esteem, quality of life will be so much better for having done that it's worth all the nerves in the world.
Yeah, and you remember Book and Brunch? I remember they were pitching at the National Crowdfunding Association
Yes.
when I was moderating, and they ended up winning that pitch competition, but the slide stopped working. She started freaking out.
Yeah.
Just did this, just kept going, ended up winning.
Yeah. As Stefan says, dance like nobody is watching. Yeah, that's another way to say it.
What tips do you have for founders who are pitching to raise funds?
So a big confusing thing sometimes is that people either think they have to not talk about their consumer problems at all and just pitch to the investors, just show the market opportunity, just show the growth potential, or they think they don't have to talk to investors problems at all and they just have to make like a sales deck and talk about consumer problems. I would say it's somewhere in the middle. You still have to tell the story of what the consumers, the people you're ultimately pitching to, you have to tell the story of why they will pay for this when you're pitching to investors and trying to raise money. But you also have to realize what the investor's problem is that they're trying to invest in a lot of different companies, knowing that most of them won't work. So the ones that do have to have a huge growth potential. You were the one who taught me this early on. And so it's not about, hey, we've got this great boutique lifestyle business that we can create. That is a great business, and if you want to do that, you should do that. You don't have to start a unicorn, dragon, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You don't have to start a $1 billion tech growth company. But if you want to raise money and you want to raise it from accredited investors, venture capitalists, you have to know how they're coming into it. They are taking big risk, high risk bets. You have to show yourself as a high risk, high reward company. And so you have to talk about the market size, the market opportunity. You have to understand what your, go-to-market strategy is. You have to be able to tell the story. The new CEO of Techstars is fantastic. I just want to make sure I want to pronounce her name correctly. I think it's Maëlle, but she's the new CEO of Techstars, and she's great. I follow her on LinkedIn and encourage all founders to follow her because she posts really, really good stuff. But she talks about if you're not in it for the next 10 years, investors aren't going to bet on you. So you also have to convince them both in your delivery, the passion and the way you tell your story, and the fact that your story makes sense, that you're really into this problem, in this solution, you're not going anywhere. You really, really want to be able to tell that story. As Stefan says, you have to tell the story of the total accessible market, the serviceable obtainable market, and then the serviceable addressable market. You have to be able to show all those things, but you also want to convince them that you're in this for the long haul. This isn't some 2-year play and you'll just, sell it off or, go into crypto or NFTs whenever you feel like it because you think there's a quick buck to be made there. So I would say, really think about how to convince investors, not only that the business is a good play, because, obviously they need to believe in that, but that you yourself are a good long-term bet. You as a founder will do whatever it takes to tackle the obstacles, pivot, sign deals, merge, whatever to get them their exit, and that it probably won't come for 5 or 10 years. So you have to be able to tell them that. And then, I guess you also want to speak in a way that convinces them that you have the ability to execute, that it's not just a dream, but you have the quickness, the sharpness, the decisiveness to execute. And then the final thing I'd say is, I talk about this in my book as well, but learn about the 4 different types of audience members, or the 4 different types of investors. This is stuff I've cobbled together from the DISC model of personality, as well as some other like learner's theory and Jungian personality types, but I call them the 4 types of audience members: the visionaries, the empaths, the pragmatists, and the theorists. Basically, visionaries want a big idea to invest in. Empaths want a human story to invest in. Theorists want the data. They need to hear the data behind it. And the pragmatists need the operational, practical how-to steps. So make sure you cover all that type of information in your pitch, and you're more likely to hit all the different investors that you'll be talking to.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head on a lot of that. And investors want to know why you, like, if you're pitching to them, why the person in front of them, because business model, everything else is pretty much just a checkbox. The big enough market, the business model looks good, product's good, but why this person? Is this person going to be successful? Do they have specific insights into the market that no one else has? Are they driven, have done more experience? So yeah, investors are trying to evaluate you. So it's a good point when you say they want to know your journey and maybe some of your failings, because they want to see how you pivoted and how you changed your mind and how your mind works, to see if that's what they're going in the future. That's amazing advice. I know Stefan's going on and on in the chat room here.
Stefan said,
yeah, go ahead.
Stefan said, should we have all those 4 personas on stage pitching their parts like an a cappella El Divo concert? No, that is not recommended. Don't do that. Definitely do not do that. But I love the idea. Yeah, sorry, Craig, go ahead.
That's all right. In your opinion, what makes a great public speaker, and what traits or skills do they possess?
What makes a great public speaker ultimately is somebody who speaks in alignment with what they really love and believe in. This concept of alignment that I talk about it comes from the French existentialists. I read about them from Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and then got a bit more into it. And basically, there's this idea of being in alignment, or what the existentialists would call authenticité, I guess. And the authenticité would be what you say, what you do, what you believe in, the way you think, the way you talk, all of it is connected and is authentic to the other parts. You're not saying shit you don't believe in. You're not acting in a way that is out of alignment with your values. Everything you think, say, do, the way your voice works, the way your hands work, they're all telling the same story. And that story is deeply, deeply personal, emotional, and powerful for you. So that's what makes a great public speaker. They don't have to be loud. I worked with this founder from Japan through Entrepreneurs Organization. He was so good, and he was the quietest, slowest speaker. But when he did that, the whole room just shut up and listened to him. He had this magnetism about him, the way when he pitched and talked. And so I didn't need to change him to help him. I just had to give him little tweaks here and there, but he didn't have to talk like me in order to be powerful. He just had to talk like himself, with all the conviction and the passion that he had. And it read with his slow, quiet style. So I would say the best public speakers are those who speak in complete alignment with everything they believe in and think and say, and how they act is all coming from a deep personal well of purpose and passion, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, I have to remember to put explicit on the iTunes tag whenever you're on. It's always,
you're not going to get me to talk for an hour without swearing.
Yeah, I've known you a long time, Will. I know that. So this is going to be a personal plug. Tell the audience why they should come out to Startup Investor Drinks events that we host every month.
So we talked about the virtuous cycle of speaking opportunities. There are a couple of events, but not really any that I can think of in Toronto like yours, but where you just can hone your skills. Just like the Beatles used to play in a strip club in Hamburg, and that's where they honed their onstage skills. They used to play for 8 hours a night. Malcolm Gladwell talked about that in his book. Like Bill Gates used to sneak in his school's computer room and just code or whatever the hell that was for an hour. I don't know computers. They got their reps in. And they got their 10,000 hours, they practiced, they tried it. If you come to Startup Drinks every month and sign up with Craig and practice for your pitch, you are just honing your pitch. I mean, you should go to other events as well, but Startup Drinks is a great place. Every month, you're going to go pitch in front of, what is the turnout usually like? 100, how many people?
Between 100 and 150 people.
Yeah, between 100 and 150 people. Practice that moment of being on stage and going, oh, fuck, what do I say? Practice that moment of forgetting what you want to say, but it being okay afterwards. Practice that moment of the slides screwing up, but that doesn't matter. Practice pitching it doing what we call the social pitch or the networking pitch, where you're just pitching to another person face to face in the crowd. Your speaking skills, your confidence will just get honed. That's like going to the gym for your pitching and communication skills. So just go to Startup Drinks every month, put it in your calendar, and then go to the other events like that, whenever they pop up, or volunteer for pitch competitions, sign up for pitch competitions, go to networking events, go on Meetup, ask to take people out for coffee, people in your target audience, mentors, practice talking about your ideas and your vision with people, and whether that's in public or one-on-one. And the more you do that, the more your skills will get honed, your message will get honed. I've been doing this for 6 years. I teach this shit, and my message is always being refined and honed. And I'm constantly looking for better ways to say things, more real ways to talk about my problems and solutions and prizes. So it never stops, but you just get better and better and better.
So your book, Transform Your Speaking Skills, Gain Confidence, Captivate Audience, and Advance Your Career. Who is your target audience? Who should pick this up today?
Entrepreneurs and founders, anyone who has to talk about who they are and what they do for a living, to gain money, to sell things, to get forward recommendations at work, to do presentations at work, to lead a team at work. It's really geared towards entrepreneurs and leaders. So, founders and CEOs and C-suite executives at corporate as well. But it's about, I just got a client for the first time this happened, who had read my book. He's a leader at a big financial institution, and he read my book and he reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, I want to work with you. And that was the first time that it happened since I released my book, which was kind of exactly what I was hoping for, where he read my stuff and goes, oh, I want to learn this. And I like reading about it, but I also want to, work on it with the live feedback and the live coaching. So I would say, if you're a business leader or an entrepreneur and you need to pitch, you need to lead a team, you need to communicate with people, and you have a sense too that the way you speak now isn't comfortable or authentic to you, and you wish you could have better quality conversations and better quality public speaking events, then it's for you. And through my stories of all the times I struggled in my life, all the difficulties I've had, all the moments where I thought I was never going to amount to anything and never do anything or accomplish anything, and how I've learned to manage that, if not conquer it. I hope that those personal stories tied into the 5 steps of my method, with lots of practical advice, practical tips, will give you that confidence, give you some techniques you can hold in your hand and really use. I would say that's who it's for. And I just really hope it does for you what I hope it does for you, which is make it a little bit easier for you to accept that next pitch opportunity, speaking opportunity, have that difficult conversation. That's what I would say. Craig put it in the Zoom chat. You can type in Transform Your Speaking Skills, Will Greenblatt, and find it on Amazon. I think it's $9.99 on Kindle, $20 on, to get a hard copy. If you would review it and leave a rating, that would mean the world to me as well, because, that's how these things get going. So just check it out if you think it can help you.
Absolutely. And those listening on the podcast, the links to the book will be in the show notes. So definitely check that out. Where can people go to find out more about Will Greenblatt, OutLoud Speakers School, anything you got
Yeah.
going on?
So on LinkedIn, which I think we put in the show notes, you can find me on LinkedIn at Will Greenblatt, Instagram as well at Will Greenblatt. That's where I post most of my kind of instructional, educational, fun content about how you can be a better speaker, how you can be a better communicator, better leader, better CEO, entrepreneur, all that stuff. So yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram are the best places to find me. Will at outloudnow.com is my email if you want to go old school. And the website is outloudnow.com. And you can learn more about our kind of corporate and accelerator pitch programs there. Yeah, outloudnow.com, Will at outloudnow.com, and Will Greenblatt on social media.
All those links will be in the show notes on the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing all these insights. That it's really been wonderful, Will.
Thank you for having me. And thank you, Stefan, and everybody else who showed up and asked questions. And I'm sorry if there were questions that I didn't get to, but I'd love to do this again some point soon. And if you have any other questions, just, find me on LinkedIn and ask me there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Will. And we'll chat soon.
Yeah. Talk soon, Craig.
Bye.
Bye.